Thank you so much. So this is a continuation from what Janet had opened up in regards to the suite of bills that are now under federal review. I will be speaking about specifically HR 5540, which as our organization, Black Women for Wellness, is co-sponsoring with all the other partners here today. And so we'll look at, more closely about what does this bill mean and what does it mean for consumers as a whole. So next slide. So again, as we shared earlier, as I had mentioned in the morning presentation, the Environmental Justice Program Manager for Black Women for Wellness, and we believe in empowering, uplifting, and looking at the health and well-being of Black women and young girls. That is why it's very relevant that we bring awareness and talk about these issues as it relates to our overall health and well-being and bringing reproductive justice greater to the community at large. So next slide. And so specifically for this particular bill, it looks at the cosmetic safeties for community of color and professional salon workers. And so yesterday we heard from several of the salon workers and their testimonials and personal experiences and how that affects their overall health and well-being. Some of the chronic exposures, how are related to, health conditions, being, exposed to the, toxins and the fumes in their, a need for, proper ventilation and overall environment that is conducive of safety. And so looking at this is a great example of bringing that to light, that this bill will provide greater protections specifically for the industry of those who work in salon and exposed to the toxins and chemicals day in and day out. So I'm not going to go through all the bullet points here, but as a whole, this bill not only looks at, for women of color, so Black and brown women, as we know from earlier shared in the morning presentation from the Capable study and our Taking Stock study, is that women of color, are disproportionately affected by the toxins and the chemicals that they're, exposed to, as well as the salon workers. And so we want to be able to provide, safety measures for them. Next slide. And so specifically what this bill would lay out would be, grant opportunities and funding opportunities that would be provided so that they can have, greater look at the science and the research. And so I would say here is that there is a need, for more people of color that are representative and a part of these committees that are doing the selection process. But also, what does that mean in terms of, STEM, which is, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So having a pipeline to these, research opportunities, because in order to be able to gather the research, we need those that, are going to participate in the studies. And I believe it was mentioned yesterday in one of the sessions, the lack of trust or the distrust of medical and the science as a whole. And so how do we break down those barriers is by having individuals of people of color that are a part of research and that are going into these different types of professions to be able to do more research, and also to be able to be on the boards and the committee to offer more grant and funding opportunities to be able to look at some of the work that needs to be done for the more vulnerable populations here. So this bill specifically would grant 15 million in terms of furthering the research efforts. Next slide. Also, it creates opportunities for looking at the Environmental Protection Agency grant program. So granting, so extension of that research will be granting those that would be looking at safer alternatives. So as we say, green chemistry alternatives that would, look at some of the hazardous, most of the hazardous or the worst of the worst, toxins and chemicals in beauty products and personal care products that are often largely marketed to communities of color, Black and brown women. And so this would will be a prelude to having those opportunities available for that. And so again, this would be a provision and part of this specific bill if it were passed into federal law. And then believe lastly, the next screen, inclusion of product ingredient review. So I think Janet touched on this, having greater transparency, right? We need to know what are in the products. I know we're working closely with Women Voices of the Earth in one of the grant funding opportunities and looking at salon grade products. Also, it was shared in yesterday's presentation about often the salon workers, when they go to, get the products or shopping for their products, oftentimes they don't, know what are some of the ingredients that are listed in there or contained with these various products that they use. And so it would direct the Health and Human Services and the Federal Drug Administration to have greater transparency advisory committees to help to ensure that there's cosmetic, protections and safeties. So the members of the advisory committee would include departments of minority health, again, going back to having representatives from the community that look like us and are for us, as well as individuals from organizations representing women of color, professional nail, hair, and beauty salon workers and technicians to be a part of these various boards and advisory committees. And then translation of the data safety sheets, because oftentimes this is very high level, not knowing how to, translate it, as we say, the translation of the science from the bench to the community. And so looking at the safety, data sheets and, being able to decipher on what these, chemicals mean. So we often say, if you can't read it or you can't, decipher what it is, how are you going to know, how to make, better choices for you? And so it would mandate more access to safety data sheets by the salon owners and salon workers, and making these available also on the scale of manufacturers and being able to provide those to distributors, and so that they can have those on hand as well. It requires safety data sheets to be translated into a variety of other languages as well upon request as needed. And then also salon product ingredient disclosure. I think I touched on this earlier. And so making sure that the labels contain the products. One of the key culprit is synthetic fragrances. And so, just listing fragrance, as we know that, a fragrance can contain a variety of different, chemicals in there. And so having the label packaging, whether it be a salon grade, product on there that lists out individually what those, key products and ingredients. Often synthetics culprit for that are phthalates that are found in fragrances. And so we know that that's also, something that's very disruptive to the body and particularly to the reproductive system. And so in there, it would have accompanying, the information on manufacturing websites, also at the distribution level, and in terms of selling these to professionals about the labeling of these ingredients as well. Next slide. And then interagency council on cosmetic safety. And so establishing a council that would be comprehensive of, these heavy hitters, and such as the FDA, the NIES, HS, as well as, OSHA and EPA, that would comprise this committee to look at a greater, protections and safety, sharing the data, collectively, so not being siloed out, promoting, cross collaboration and inroads, that we can, work collaboratively in this industry of beauty justice and generating solutions to address these key concerns that affect, women of color and their adverse health outcomes as it relates to, as we said, a myriad of issues such as breast cancer, uterine fibroids, ovarian cancers as such, and those that are exposed on a chronic everyday basis, such as our, salon workers and nail technicians and those that work in the beauty industry. So overall, as a whole, for this particular bill, it is definitely much needed, and we are in support of that. And hopefully, we can get greater traction and awareness around this specific bill in the suite of bills that are going to be shared with you all today.